All right, so we created CreditChain, which is a blockchain for hiring documents. So what kind of led us to create this was the process of onboarding, specifically when you get hired at a company. Just to speak from some personal experience, I worked in retail banking as a bank teller, and whenever I was getting hired by this company, it required a criminal background check, a run of my credit history, and a transcript, along with letters of recommendation. And it took a lot of work and a lot of time, I know not only on my part, but also on their part, in order to gather all of those things. If you think about it, your credit check comes from a credit bureau, transcripts obviously come from your college, and you could have multiple. And criminal records, for example, I'm from Illinois, but the job was in Missouri, so it had to pull criminal records from both states. So all in all, like, my experience is not a unique one. Hiring in any capacity involves these important documents, which can just add a lot of stress and complexity to the hiring process. You can go this way. So yeah, this is kind of what I just talked about, but to narrow it in a little bit, not only thinking about me, but these are things that affect everyone, whether it be transcripts, recommendation letters, any other sensitive documents that might be industry specific. It just adds a lot of time and requires a lot of resources on both the hiree and the hiring side of things.
Okay, so now to go on to the strategic shift. So right now the problem is that hiring documents are all over the place, like Katie said before, transcripts, certificates, background checks, and every company has to go and verify these. So what we're doing instead is putting everything in one place where it's already verified and the individual controls their credentials. Employers can request access to what they need, and institutions like universities or courts can upload verified documents directly. So instead of repeating them the same process over and over, everything is already ahead of time, and it just makes the hiring process much faster.
So as an example that we wanted to put in is like in a job application, for example, without blockchain right now, it works as like an applicant has to submit the resume and their documents, and then they collect them. But then this employer has to go through a very long process of just contacting institutions and other places for verification for the documents. And this is a process that's very slow, and it can take days or even sometimes weeks. So in this process also, there's a lot of room for fraud, errors, and delays. But with blockchain, we can simplify this process a lot with just an applicant shares a verification link. This employer has access to this link throughout the blockchain, and the smart contract will just verify the credential. And this will go from days and weeks process to just seconds, and it would just promote faster hiring and better decisions. So we wanted to compare blockchain with like a traditional database. So first of all, with a traditional database, we would have just centralized, so it's just a single authority. Data can be altered and manipulated in many ways. It requires trust in one organization, and it's as said, it's a very slow verification process. Well, with CreditChain, this would change. It would be decentralized, so there's no one single owner. It's immutable and tamper-proof records. It's shared trust across institutions, and is instant and automated verification. So basically, in a nutshell, this blockchain transforms verification from a manual trust process into an automated trust system. So, and also we wanted to talk about competitors. So we have Appy that they focus themselves more into this world, but with only career history, and WorkWolf with just digital passports. We chose those two, but there's many more. But it was just to make a point that they work in a niche. They're very niche. So the competitive advantage that we have as a company is just that it specializes in providing one specific element Other companies just provide one specific element, but we is a one-stop shop that holds all types of relevant records. It's very important to take into account. And now I wanted to show our vision for the project. So first of all, we want to build a strong foundation, so a secure digital credential system with user identity plus document storage and with smart contract-based access control. So I don't know what this level is doing, but the launch, we would partner with different universities and certification bodies and onboard early employers and users and define verification standards. And after that scale, we'll integrate HR and applicant tracking systems that these are just like every company is using it right now for resume screening. I don't know if you guys know with AI also. So, and expand institutional partnerships and drive network effects across users.
All right, and then this is just a visual to help kind of put into perspective all of the different players that are gonna take part into the blockchain process that we're describing. So there's three main elements. One being users, so this would kind of be people like us that are entering the job market and that are applying for a lot of different jobs at the same time. Rather than have to collect documents every time they want to apply to a different job, they will be able to use the blockchain credential platform, which will then link them with institutions and employers. So institutions are able to upload their verified credentials, which will then be linked with specific users. And then employers will be able to request the ability to view documents for the people that they are considering hiring. So that's just kind of to help visualize what is going to be happening and how each different player plays a role in this system.
Yeah, so here we talk about like the economic part of business and how we have subscriptions. So we use like a pilot your assumptions just to show like how this would work. And the numbers we use, like the cost as well, like it just kind of we base them on like similar competition in terms of like how much the setup cost would be. But our revenue would come from three different main streams. We'd have the employer subscriptions and then verification fees, and then university credential insurance fees as well, issuance fees. And then this one, we put costs aside. We estimate that project revenue would be 150,000 if we just like based it on if we had these people working, like we had these employed by customers. And then we showed that our cost assumption is that operating costs are almost half, like less than half, which means that we would have good margin to grow and scale this, not just in a small area, but like we wanted to make this across America in general. And then one risk is smart contract vulnerability. So meaning like flaws in the code that could create like security issues at the start. And we mitigate this through third-party audits and extensive testing of the code. Another risk is compliance and data privacy, which we could address through permissioned blockchain and where access is restricted to approved parties only, along with legal compliance reviews. We also recognize adoption like could be slow at first, like getting like these schools and companies and everyone to work together as one. So approach would be to start with university partnerships like SLU, WashU on a small scale, and then scale outwards and move to different states. We've also factored in costs tied to managing risks like audits and compliance support and the onboarding. And then the big takeaway is we're prioritizing trust and product market fit first, just to see if it does work before thinking about more advanced features like tokenization. And our focus would really on building something secure and practical and scalable first before we decide to grow.
So now here's a look at our Solidity. So each of these functions has a specific role. So first, an institution can issue a verified credential, like a transcript or certificate, and then the candidate can control access and approve an employer to view it. So then once that happens, when the employer checks it, they're verifying the credential through a hash, so they know it's real without us having to store the full document in the blockchain. So if something changes, like a credential expires or something gets updated in the employer's documents. Then that will get logged and then you can have a clear record of the access. So overall, this keeps everything like transparent, clear, and just easier.